A few years ago, Fujifilm released the X-H1 camera, which was the larger, bulkier version of the X-T3, but it didn't offer much over the X-T3 aside from the fact that it had IBIS. And the argument was that in order to put IBIS in these smaller APS-C cameras, you had to make a much larger camera. This was promptly debunked by Fujifilm themselves when they released the X-T4 in 2020, which had IBIS, had the same smaller design, and also had the flip-out touchscreen that a lot of photographers were disappointed with. And a lot of people were talking about how Fujifilm should discontinue the X-H1 because the X-T4 did virtually everything better than the X-H1, so didn't really make sense to have the X-H1 or the X-H line of cameras. But fortunately, Fuji didn't discontinue that, and they continued with that design, but they made full use of that design with the X-H2 because it's got a cooling system, it's got incredible video features. I mean, it's a $2,000 camera that can shoot 8K RAW externally, but still 8K RAW, which is quite a remarkable camera system. And the most recent announcement is Fujifilm's new X-T5, and this camera, in my opinion, really rounds off Fujifilm's offering, because now there's actual logic in what their camera systems are. You've got the X-H series of cameras that leans a little bit more towards video, and now you've got the X-T5, which has done away with a number of things that they did with the X-T4, and it makes a lot more sense. So let's get into this. Let's find out what is in the, or what's new with the new X-T5 camera. So the first thing that Fujifilm has done with the X-T5 is they've gone back to the tilt screen that was in the X-T3. The X-T4 had that flip out touchscreen, which a lot of photographers were displeased with because that's kind of more of a video centric feature. Tilty screen is more useful for photographers because you can quickly change the angle depending on how you're shooting. So that's a great little change. But Fujifilm has also got rid of some of the ports. So the HDMI port has gone back to the smaller port, but they've also got rid of the headphone jack, which was in the X-T3, but it's not in the X-T5. So bit of an odd change, but this is a photographer-centric camera, so, you know, makes sense to some extent. But I would have liked to have seen a headphone jack in the X-T5 anyway, even if it's not leaning towards video, guys. The other thing that Fujifilm has done is they've got rid of the CF Express card slots. They've gone back to using SD cards. CF Express, useful if you're shooting high resolution video, but it's overkill if you're just shooting stills. So I'm pleased to see that Fujifilm has gone back to SD cards. They're less expensive, so it's not going to cost you as much, and I think photographers are going to appreciate it. People generally tend to have, or photographers probably have more SD cards than they do CF Express cards. So I'm quite pleased about this change on the camera. Now, of course, Fujifilm is using the brand new 40 megapixel sensor in the new X-T5 camera, which is the same as the one in the X-H2, except that the video features are different. The X-T5 can only shoot up to 6.2K, and the X-H2 obviously shoots up to 8K and 8K RAW externally. So, you know, Fujifilm really wanted to drill this point in, and that is that the X-H2 leaning more towards video, X-T5 leaning more towards photographers. And I think photographers are going to appreciate the bump in resolution because it does produce larger files. And if you don't need those bigger files, or if you don't need the extra resolution, you can always shoot in a smaller format, but that extra resolution is available if you need it. And compared to the X-T3, you are seeing more detail. It is a bigger file, and when you're shooting with something like the 80mm f2.8, which is a fantastic lens, the higher resolution sensor picks up a fantastic amount of detail, and I'm really pleased about it. It's not a full comparison because I don't have access to the raw files just yet, but you know, looking at the JPEGs, you can clearly see that the X-T5 is doing a great job at picking out all those little nuances and little details. So that's a great addition, or a great improvement with the X-T5. Even the autofocus when I was shooting stills just felt a lot snappier with the X-T5. It was just a lot quicker. It was finding the subject much faster in comparison to the X-T3. The X-T3, it's an older camera, 4 years old, and it was just hunting a lot more in these less than challenging situations, and the X-T5 was just a lot snappier. It was finding the subject much quicker. With the 80mm macro, it just found the subject so much better in comparison to the X-T3. However, when it comes to autofocus for video, there isn't that much of a difference in performance compared to the X-T3, which is a noticeably older camera. Now, obviously, I haven't done a full comparison, so I can't make proper conclusions on this, but based on the footage that I've taken, based on what I'm seeing, autofocus for video, not that much better. So a little disappointed because the autofocus features for video, that is one of the key things that I think Fujifilm really needs to work on. But then again, this is more of a photographer's camera, so it doesn't matter too much. I think a lot of people, if you're just shooting stills more and you want to dabble in a little bit of video, I think you're going to be very pleased with the overall performance, including the autofocus, but especially the IBIS, because the IBIS in this camera is fantastic. It just took away a lot of those micro jitters and that jerky looking footage. You can shoot more effectively handheld even when you're moving, and I think that the IBIS in this camera is fantastic. Definitely better than the X-T3, potentially a lot better than the X-T5 as well, because if I'm not mistaken, the X-T5, the IBIS was only up to 5 stops. This is up to 7 stops, same as the X-H2, so fantastic performance in that regard. But the most important thing, I think, is the fact that Fujifilm has properly rounded off their APS-C offering, or their APS-C lineup. You've got video-centric cameras, or cameras that lean more towards video, like the X-H2. So if you need those extra video features, if you need that bigger camera, if you need that internal cooling system because you want to shoot that high-end video, then you pay that £200 more and you get that camera. And if you don't need video features, or if you're not that fussed about video and you're more interested in stills, you can save a little bit of money and buy the X-T5, which is fantastic value for money right now, because Fujifilm has kept the price at $16.99 for the last 5 years, and we've had a pandemic and a freaking crash of the pound, and the X-T5 is still the same price. So I commend Fujifilm on doing that. They've kept the price low, and it's a freaking bargain. It honestly is, considering what you're getting. You're getting a 40 megapixel camera, fantastic stills, amazing autofocus, beautiful looking results, tiny camera with all that ergonomic goodness, and you don't have to spend ridiculous amounts of money on CF Express cards and all that kind of nonsense. You've just got such a well-rounded camera, and I'm really pleased with what Fujifilm has done. This is a brilliant addition. They brought logic back to their APS-C system. Video on one side, stills on the other. There's clear defining lines, so I'm very pleased with how the X-T5 just rounds off everything. So yeah, that's been a bit of a hands-on look at the new X-T5 camera, which was announced earlier today, and I'd love to know what you guys think of this camera, this new system. Is this something that you'll be interested in? Is this something that you've been looking forward to? Are you happy about the fact that Fujifilm has adjusted their lineup, so X-H2 on one side, X-T5 on the other? Or did you want a camera that does absolutely everything all the time? Anyway, love to know what you guys think. Hit the like button, subscribe, share this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you.